Richard Boone really hated him more than Nanyon. Richard Boone was born Rickard Allen Boone on June 18, 1917 in Los Angeles, California. Boone grew up in a family that loved culture and art. His father, Kirk Boone, was a business lawyer, and his mother, Cecile, was related to the famous American pioneer Daniel Boone. While this family history would later be interesting to the public, young Richard at first had no plans of becoming an actor. Boone went to Hoover High School in Glendale, California, where he started to love sports and reading books. After he graduated, he went to Stanford University to study different subjects, but he soon found school boring, and after 2 years, he left school. To try other things, he worked many different jobs, like working in oil fields, being a bartender, and painting. These jobs gave him a tough working man realness, which later helped a lot in his movie acting. When World War II started, Boone joined the United States Navy, working as an airplane weapons man on big ships in the Pacific Ocean. His time in the war not only made his work habits better, but also made him more serious about what he wanted to do in his acting job. After the war, looking for a new path in life, Boone decided to put his energy and experiences into acting. He went to the actor studio in New York City, learning from famous teacher Stella Adler, which put him with a group of actors who cared about honest feelings and character-focused work. Boone started his professional career on the stage, acting in Broadway plays and traveling shows. His natural seriousness and strong presence quickly got the attention of Hollywood casting directors. He made his first movie in Halls of Montezuma 1951, a World War drama, and during the 1950s, he appeared in many movies that showed how good he was at different roles, including cowboy movies like The Robe, 1953, and The Tall T, 1957, as well as war movies and crime thrillers. But Boone's most important role, and the one that would put his name forever into television history, came in 1957 when he was chosen as Paladin, the smart black-dressed gunfighter for hire in the CBS Western show Have Gun Will Travel, for 6 seasons. From 1957 to 1963, Boone played Paladin as a special mix of smart learning and deadly skill, a man who quoted books as easily as pulled out his gun. The role let Boone add complexity and moral confusion into a type of show often filled with simple characters, and the show became one of the most popular and praised shows of its time. Besides his acting, Boone was deeply involved in the creative process of his work. He often worked together on script writing and pushed for storylines that looked at deeper ideas like justice, honor, and the gray areas of right and wrong. After Have Gun Will Travel, Boone starred in The Richard Boone Show, 1963 to 1964. An ambitious anthology show that let him show his range by playing different characters each week. Though it didn't last long, the show was praised for its daring idea and high-quality storytelling. Boone's career in the 1960s and 1970s included roles in important movies like Hirio Konko's 1964, The Kremlin Letter 1970, Big Jake 1971 alongside John Wayne, and The Shootist 1976, in which he once again worked with Wayne in the legendary actor's final movie. Boone's ability to move easily between television and movies, hero and bad guy, proved him to be one of the most versatile actors of his time. Away from cameras, Boone was known for his smarts, humor, and strong opinions. He moved to Hawaii in the late 1960s, looking for a quieter, more self-sufficient lifestyle. There, he learned about local culture, taught drama at the University of Hawaii, and continued acting in chosen projects. Friends and coworkers often talked about his deep respect for the craft of acting and his willingness to help younger actors. Richard Boone's personality had 3 important marriages, each showing a different chapter in his life and career. His first marriage was to Jane Hopper, whom married in 1937, a time when Boone was still figuring things out as a young man and had not yet started the famous acting career that would later define him. Their marriage lasted for 3 years before ending. In 1940, a time just before Boone's life would change dramatically with his service in World War II and his eventual decision to try acting. Almost 10 years later, Boone married for a second time, this time to Mimi Kelly in 1949. This marriage, however, was short as well, lasting only about a year before they divorced in 1950. It was in 1951 that Boone entered into the marriage that would last for the rest of his life to Clary Malone. This relationship proved to be his longest and most stable, giving him both personal happiness and family life during the height of his Hollywood career and beyond. The couple's bond stayed strong until Boone's death in 1981, lasting 3 decades. That saw both wins and challenges in Boone's work and personal world. Richard and Claire had one child together. Their son, Peter Boone, following in his father's footsteps, at least for a while. Peter appeared as a killed actor in several episodes of Have Gun Will Travel, the famous CBS television show in which Richard Boone starred as sophisticated gun for hire paladin. Peter's appearances not only gave audiences a behind-the-scenes look into the Boone family connection, but also showed the strong ties between father and son. While Peter eventually chose a path outside the acting profession as he grew older, his child work alongside his father remains a charming and memorable footnote in the legacy of one of television's most lasting westerns. Richard Boone was not the type of man to say nice things or hide his feelings behind polite Hollywood smiles. Known for his rough features, gravelly voice, and commanding presence both on and off the screen, Boone carried with him a strong sense of pride and an unshakable moral compass. To him, respect was earned not by fame or wealth, but by how a person treated others, whether they were a fellow actor, a studio worker, or the man cleaning the soundstage. Over his decades in the entertainment industry, Boone met all kinds: the humble, the arrogant, the genuine, the fake. Heck would tolerate arrogance to a point, and he could deal with artistic ego if it was backed by talent. But there was one man whose very name seemed to light something deeper than annoyance in Boone. A man he once told friends he truly hated more than anyone else in Hollywood. Kirk Douglas. The hate was not the kind of casual dislike that actors sometimes develop from a small disagreement on set. This was the simmering, deep-seated disgust that had been built over years of personal observations and professional meetings. Boone found Douglas to represent a very quality he hated in a man: bragging, vanity, and an almost sick need to control every room walked into. To Boone, Kirk Douglas wasn't just confident. He was arrogant in the purest sense, walking through Hollywood as if every success in the industry had been built only to show off his greatness. Douglas, for his part, was not sorry about his forceful personality. He often spoke of fighting his way up from poverty to stardom, and perhaps in his mind, that justified his combative nature. But to Boone, there was no excuse for the way Douglas treated people he considered beneath him. Stories spread in Hollywood about Douglas's difficult behavior, cutting lines from co-star scripts to give himself more screen time, challenging directors' authority in front of the crew, and doing behind the scenes politics that often left co-workers bitter. Boone had either seen such behavior firsthand or heard the accounts from people he trusted, and each new incident only made his contempt deeper. Boone believed acting was a team art form, and he valued loyalty and friendship above a personal glory. The idea that someone as powerful as Douglas would use his influence to overshadow others rather than lift them up struck Boone as dishonorable. Their paths crossed in the social circles of Hollywood's elite, and while Boone was by no means shy or timid, Hefton found Douglas's larger-than-life personality to be suffocating. Kirk's booming laugh, his love for self-promotion, and his habit of turning any conversation back to himself gotten Boone's nerves. At industry gatherings, Boone would sometimes excuse himself early rather than endure another round of Douglas' self-praising tales. Friends noted that Boone, who could be charming and friendly with most people, became noticeably colder and more distant whenever Douglas entered the room. It isn't entirely clear whether the two ever confronted each other openly about their mutual dislike, but Boone's remarks to close friends were clear. He also said that Douglas was a man so in love with his own reflection he forgets other people exist. A sharp comment that circulated quietly among those who knew Boone well. Boone's disgust was not born from jealousy. By the time their careers overlapped, in the public eye, Boone was already a respected actor with a devoted fan base from Have Gun Will Travel and a reputation as a man who could carry a movie or television show on his own merits. Rather, his hatred was rooted in a personal code, and Douglas, in Boone's eyes, had violated every rule of it. Hollywood is full of rivalries, but the Boone-Douglas fight had a personal intensity that made it different from ordinary professional comedy. It wasn't just about two actors who didn't get along. It was about a clash of fundamental values. Boone represented the ideal of integrity and respect among peers. Douglas represented, at least to Boone, the cutthroat ambition that could turn artistry into ego-driven spectacle. And while Boone certainly encountered other difficult personalities in his career, none left as bitter a taste in his mouth as Kirk Douglas. In the end, whether their hatred was mutual or one-sided, Boone made no secret to those close to him. Of all The people he had met in Hollywood, Kirk Douglas was the one man truly hated more than anyone else. Stories from the set and from industry insiders hinted that their mutual dislike was no secret. Boone could be openly gruff toward Douglas, and there were moments when that hostility nearly boiled over into outright confrontation, if that happened. To be in the same social circle, Boone often kept his distance, muttering to friends about Douglas's peacock strut or his tendency to treat others like supporting players in the Kirk Douglas show. Boone, who had a quiet pride in being a team player on set, resented what he saw as Douglas' habit of controlling every scene and overshadowing his co-stars, not through skill alone, but through sheer force of ego. In truth, Douglas may have been real and honest. The full extent of Boone's hostility, as his own towering self-confidence often protected him from the opinions of those he thought were rivals or less important. But for Boone, the feelings ran deep. He had clashed with other actors in his time, sometimes over politics, sometimes over artistic difference. But in his private conversations, Boone would often single out Douglas as the one man in the industry he couldn't stand. Friends claimed Boone's dislike for Douglas was so intense that he would turn down certain opportunities if he knew Douglas was involved, preferring to miss out on a good paycheck rather than endure what considered an unbearable work environment. Richard Boone passed away on January 10, 1981, at the age of 63, bringing to a close a remarkable life and career that had left a lasting mark on television, movies, and the performing arts. His death happened at his personal home in St. Augustine, Florida, a city he had come to love in his later years for its quiet charm, historic character, and slower pace of life compared to the Hollywood spotlight. Boone had been fighting throat cancer, an illness that had deeply affected both his health and voice, two things that had always been central to his work as an actor. The complications from throat cancer were severe and got worse over time. They weakened him physically and made speaking, one of his greatest tools as a performer, painful and difficult. Boone had tried various treatments, but the disease proved relentless. Despite his condition, he maintained a degree of privacy and dignity, avoiding excessive public attention during his final months, preferring instead to spend quiet time with his family and close friends. Following his death, Boone's wishes for his final resting place reflected his deep connection to the Pacific region, particularly Hawaii, where he had lived and worked extensively. He had spent a significant portion of his later career in Hawaii, even filming parts of his television work there, and he had developed a deep appreciation for its natural beauty and peaceful festal. In keeping with his desire to be forever linked to the ocean he loved, his ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean off the Hawaiian coast. This final act was both symbolic and deeply personal, allowing Boone, a man who had lived much of his life in constant motion and adventure, to rest in the endlessness of the Pacific for his fans, friends, and family. The scattering of his ashes over those waters became a poetic conclusion to the life of an actor whose rugged presence and commanding voice had made him a memorable figure in American entertainment history. Then, too,